Hello again, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this June 4th edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show once again. Up first, hazardous weather. Fire danger graphic. Starting in the south, shows some high fire danger up there in northeast Bristol Bay from roughly Dillingham eastward to north of King Salmon and west of Iliamna Lake. And then kind of hard to see there, but that's the southern Susitna Valley, shows high to very high fire danger in that zone, but better up to the north. And none over the Copper River Basin or upper Tanana Valley 40-mile country due to the good rainfall I've had in that area, especially today around Northway, where they picked up 1¼ inches of precipitation in just 6 hours during the day today. And starting to lighten up now. They went from the moderate to heavy rain to light rain the last hour. Otherwise, it's mostly along the Yukon River there, over the central and upper Yukon River into the flats area, high to very high fire danger. That cutting across the Koyukuk Valley as well and into the Kobuk Valley. And then some elevated fire danger there north of the Nulato, or easier to say, northeast Bristol Bay there, or actually just along Norton Bay from roughly Golovin, Elam there, and kind of wrapping back around a little bit. And then the extreme fire danger, not too bad, kind of a larger area there in the Koyukuk Valley and a couple of smaller areas there south of the Yukon. So moving on to hazardous weather graphic, there are no watches, warnings, or advisories anywhere around the state today, including the Aleutians, Panhandle, Interior, for the next 24 hours. And for satellite imagery, not a lot going on. You can see a weak system there kind of pushing east or east-southeast, but well southwest of the southern Panhandle, but that is kicking some moisture up into the southeast coast, especially the southern areas there, with some light rain falling much of the day today, with showers up to the north, but rainfall amounts not too terribly heavy, maybe at 0.2 of an inch around Metlakatla or so, with the rainfall also occurring, or some showers occurring over Prince William Sound. Valdez picking up 0.2 of an inch of precipitation today. But up in the northeast Copper River Basin, Chisana had 1/3 of an inch, and then on the other side of the mountains, as I mentioned, Northway picking up 1¼ inches of precipitation. But that kind of localized area there, Tok only had about 0.15 of an inch, and then you get over toward Delta Junction, and the rain replaced by winds gusting 30 miles an hour there. Otherwise, showers and thunderstorms developing over the interior, mostly north of the Alaska, or from the Alaska Range north to the Brooks Range, and then out west to the Nulato Hills. And showers over the Yukon Delta. St. Mary's seeing about 0.2 of an inch of precipitation, while Koyuk had about 1/10 of an inch, as well as Tin City there, Bering Strait moisture brought about 1/10 of an inch of light rain, fog, and drizzle to that area. Eastern Arctic coast still looking kind of breezy, 30-35 mile an hour winds, but dry conditions there with a lot of clear skies in the observations and 10-mile visibilities up there all along the coastline during the afternoon today. You can see a weak band of cloudiness from south of St. Lawrence Island in across Macquarie on down along the Kuskokwim Delta coast there, Cape Newenham into the Alaska Peninsula. That did have some light rainfall, just a few hundredths at most there from the peninsula back up toward Cape Newenham, Macquarie area. Otherwise, just cloudy Pribilof Islands today with a few breaks possible, and dry over the Aleutians as well, with not too bad wind-wise. One of the stronger standout wind gusts with 35 miles an hour out of the northwest at Accoon Island, just west of False Pass and just east of Unalaska Island. And that probably kicked up out of the northwest through that trough passing by across the Alaska Peninsula, brought the shower activity into that area. A fairly strong high south of the central Aleutians. And to the north of that, westerly flow bringing a series of disturbances and moisture, nothing really significant or heavy, but just kind of a continuous flow of clouds and showers, fog, and drizzle. And that'll continue for the next day or so. And then low pressure well off the southeast coast there, but spinning some moisture up into the southern areas, but it's light, and then the thunderstorms occurring over the central interior. And temperatures barely getting in the 70s in some areas. Let's see, it was Beaver had 73 this afternoon, and Anana 72, and those were the two warm spots in the entire state today. Hadn't reached 70 yet in Fairbanks, with some showers around there. For tonight, the thunderstorms will continue into this evening, anywhere over from the Alaska Range and interior areas, possibly back up toward the Noatak Valley, but those will end this evening. Showers will persist but diminish, but persist probably until morning, especially over the Copper River Basin, with the heavier rain over the Northway area and that part of the state, eastern Alaska Range, ending and becoming more showery and possibly ending altogether. And that system southwest of the Queen Charlottes keeps a chance of rain up over the southern southeast coast, mostly Heidelberg, maybe Klawock, and possibly Metlakatla, but should be dry and mostly cloudy elsewhere, mostly cloudy along the North Gulf Coast. And again, a couple of weak troughs bringing some moisture eastward over the top of that ridge over the southern Bering Sea, and actually can draw in a weak frontal boundary there as a very weak low develops just north of the Pribilofs. That'll spread some moisture into Makoriak, lower flying conditions, probably a widespread area of IFR associated with that, and the warm front to the Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians back to the west. Not too bad over the western central Aleutians. And a day tomorrow, much like today, with showers and thunderstorms developing over the interior, with inland temperatures rising into the lower 70s once again, warm enough to trigger some thunderstorm activity beginning around midday again or late morning. Could be in the same areas as today, but probably not as far west. Just some showers over the Nulato Hills and some showers back up over the Noatak Valley. Chance of fog and breezy eastern and Beaufort Sea coast. And Kodiak could see some partly sunny skies with kind of a west-northwest flow there. Definitely be dry. Another showery, cloudy day over the Panhandle. Outlook for Saturday. Weak system enters the far western Bering Sea there, or southwest Bering. Western Aleutians brings rain and fog from Shemya, possibly to Amchitka by afternoon. And a weak warm front with that will just graze the Atka area and push some moisture in toward Nikolsky and maybe the Pribilofs. With a lot of IFR out there over the next couple of days with fog up through the Bering Strait. Eastern Arctic coast, maybe a little lighter on the winds. Otherwise, not much change over interior Alaska. Again, maybe a few less thunderstorms, but temperatures still in the 60s to lower 70s. Warmest over the east central interior areas, and cloudy and showery south central Alaska, and mostly cloudy with some scattered showers over the Panhandle. Lows for tonight, upper 20s to lower 30s Arctic coast, with 40s over all of interior Alaska, lower to mid 40s over the Copper River Basin, Susitna Valley, and maybe McKinley Park down to 38. Otherwise, pretty uniform on the lows across much of these states south of the Brooks Range. And for highs tomorrow, about the same as today, upper 50s, lower 60s. Southern Alaska with possible upper 60s Susitna Valley, lower 70s Fairbanks area, Fort Yukon, and Tanana. 50s to lower 60s for the Panhandle, and 40s to lower 50s Bering Sea and the Aleutians, followed by lows Saturday morning, upper 20s to lower 30s Arctic coast, 40s over the interior, and then afternoon highs again 70s, lower 70s over the central interior, and upper 30s on the Arctic coast.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving into flying weather, IFR, central eastern Beaufort Sea coast, and from the northwest capes there, Cape Lisburne, Point Hope, across the Bering Strait and much of the northern Bering Sea, much of the Bering Sea in the IFR zone. Some marginal VFR, west central Aleutians, and some marginal VFR on the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula, and possibly into Cook Inlet, and possible IFR into Prince William Sound, otherwise VFR for the Panhandle and the interior. And for the afternoon, interior Alaska, VFR, IFR persisting central eastern Beaufort Sea coast, and all of the Bering Sea through the Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island, right up to the southwest coast. Marginal VFR, southern Kuskokwim Valley, Iliamna Lake through Kamishak Gap, and the east and south side of Kodiak Island, with IFR maybe into southern Cook Inlet, southern Prince William Sound. Otherwise, marginal VFR across Kenai Peninsula, VFR, Cook Inlet, Madanuska-Susitna Valley, all the interior, and the southeast coast. And for Saturday, looks, again, mostly IFR there for the Bering Sea all the way up to St. Lawrence Island, and much of the Aleutian chain as well. Marginal for Kodiak Island, a little more in the way of marginal VFR now into Cook Inlet, kind of holding VFR though for northern Cook Inlet and the Madanuska Valley, with VFR eastern interior westward across the Kobuk and Koyukuk valleys into the lower Yukon River area, but IFR now along all the Arctic coast and pushing up into Prince William Sound, southern Kenai Peninsula, but the Panhandle holding VFR with some marginal VFR from about Sitka on up to Elfin Cove over to Yakutat. And for the afternoon, IFR pushes right up to close to the coastline. Otherwise, it's staying VFR for the southeast coast over the inside waters and all of Prince of Wales Island. Marginal VFR up along the North Gulf Coast, Kenai Peninsula. Some IFR, southern coast of the Kenai Peninsula, maybe to Seldovia, Port Mola to the east side of Kodiak. Interior looking good with VFR, but IFR, Arctic coast, much of the Bering Sea. Marginal for the Fox Islands, Alaska Peninsula. Anatuvik tomorrow, VFR. Also looking VFR, good day for Adigan. Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR once again, and for rainy VFR. Windy, VFR. Isabel, same forecast, VFR. Mintasta, starting out VFR, could become marginal in the afternoon, especially south side. And for Tanita, VFR. With Portage, could start out with IFR, but generally looking at a marginal VFR kind of day for Friday for Portage Pass. Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels up to 8,000 feet over southeast interior Alaska, otherwise generally around 6,000 feet-ish over the remainder of the interior. I have a cool pocket there near just north of the Pribilofs at 4,000 feet, and then back up to 8,000 out over the western Aleutians. And from there, taking a look at icing potential, could be some areas of mixed icing. Central interior Yukon River there, down to the western Alaska Range, to just north of Iliamna Lake, and maybe over the western Brooks Range. Nothing really significant. And some rime icing there just south of the Pribilofs, scattered areas both in advance of that and on the rear quadrant. Otherwise, nothing really too significant icing-wise coming up. Jet stream showing several upper-level lows out over the Bering Sea and off the Russian coast. Upper level high still sitting off the Arctic coast. Northeast flow coming around that, about only 30 knots though, with a ridge axis into the central interior, and upper level low west-southwest of the Queen Charlottes. Westerly flow across the southern Bering at about 80, diminishing to 50 knots over the Fox Islands. 9,000 feet showing ridging just south of the west central Aleutians, and there's some pretty good westerlies at about 40 knots there cutting across the southern Bering Sea, but those drop off considerably over toward the Alaska Peninsula. Basically high pressure light winds over interior Alaska there on the east side of the high light northerlies, light southerlies on the west side, and a weak low south of St. Lawrence Island, and that low west of the Queen Charlottes. For 3,000 feet, pretty light wind-wise overall at interior Alaska and the Gulf of Alaska and Panhandle. Weak low there near St. Lawrence Island, and some westerly winds, maybe 10 to 25 knots over the southern Bering Sea. Turbulence, maybe some light to isolated moderate mechanical turbulence or small aircraft over the eastern Beaufort Sea coast.
Howdy, stargazers. Summer is upon us, and I need to get my beach body ready, but Hercules, he never needs to work out. According to Greek myth, Herc killed Leo the lion, Cancer the crab, and Hydra the seven-headed snake. So let's find them. Around 10 p.m., you should see Hercules due east. Look for Vega, it's bright blue. Up and right from Vega is a keystone. That's our boy running with his arms raised. He's sideways right now, though, looking toward the horizon. Now put the moon in the middle and flip your view to the southwest of the sky to find Leo, Cancer, and Hydra. Leo has a backward question mark for a head, Cancer looks like an upside-down Y, and Hydra stretches lower across the sky. In his adventures, Herc went from zero to hero, and you can too if you show your friends these constellations. I'm Trace. Keep looking up.
Welcome to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder, and joining us once again is our good friend Eric Stevens from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska. He is here and has been here many times to talk to us about weather satellites and how those can help Alaskans understand our weather, how we can do better detection, keep more people safe from things even like volcanic ash. But today, Eric, you're going to talk to us a little bit more about weather satellites and how that can keep Alaskans safe and protect our property from wildfire, right?
That's right, Dave. Today's topic is where there's smoke, there's fire. And thanks for having us back again to Alaska
Anytime.
Weather. Well, weather satellites have a lot of different instruments on them. It turns out that the electromagnetic spectrum has a lot going on in it, and only one part of that is visible light, what we see.
Right.
Weather satellites, of course, report that. Today's topic is wildfires.
Okay.
There are some people who say that in Alaska in the summertime you don't have severe weather. These people are usually from Oklahoma or somewhere, and F5 tornadoes tend not to occur in Alaska.
Right.
People have also said what we do have in the summer. What is Alaska's severe summer weather can be hydrology,
Right.
flash flood and erosion in the mountains and things like that, and fires, wildfires.
Absolutely.
Those were here in 2004, certainly remember that. We've got an example here from 2014. Now, it was a quiet season overall, but in May, down on the Kenai Peninsula, we had a wildfire on the Funny River, and this is a satellite image from a polar orbiter that went right over Alaska, and we can see the plume of smoke coming out of that fire on the Kenai, curling down. It's caught in the wind.
Right.
It goes down toward Kodiak Island, curves around. You can see it circulating around a low-pressure system that's in the Gulf of
It was
Alaska.
a beautiful picture.
Oh, my gosh.
Except there was a fire.
There's a fire there. The nice thing is with this satellite image, you can tell where the fire origin is, where
Right.
the smoke is coming from. And it's a color image. We're looking at the wavelength spectrum of about 0.4 to 0.7 micrometers or microns. That's what the human eye would see. If you were riding on the satellite and looked down, you could see this kind of an image.
Right.
So that's pretty nice. But it turns out there's more to the electromagnetic spectrum than just visible light.
Okay.
You've heard of infrared, ultraviolet, that kind of thing. If we move into longer wavelengths, let's go to one specifically, 3.7 micron.
Okay, 3.7.
Why worry about that one? Well, we've got an example here. 3.7, it turns out, happens to be very sensitive to a certain temperature range, temperatures where fires burn.
Okay.
And so we've got an example zoomed in a little more from that same Funny River fire down on the Kenai Peninsula, and we can see that you get up into a few hundred degrees Fahrenheit,
Right.
and that's where the colors are. We can see there on the Funny River fire to the west and to the east, almost a horseshoe shape there, is not only we're seeing where the fire is in a general sense, but specifically where it's the active fire
That is where
front.
it's burning right now.
And it's
Amazing.
3.7 microns is the important temperature there.
Okay.
That's right.
So this is really important to firefighters on the ground, people that are making plans and directing the firefighters on where they need to go and cut the trenches and keep people safe.
You know it. If you want to fight that fire, you got to know where it is.
Okay.
You got to know the leading edge. We've also got a movie loop, nothing quite like animating it in time.
Yeah.
You can see the fire spreading out over time with a succession of film or a succession of images. Now, this is one channel, 3.7 micron. You know, we looked at that color smoke image before.
Right.
And that's actually a red, a green, and a blue. That's how you get color imagery. What if you took 3 different wavelengths in the infrared? You went from like 2.2 micron, 1.5 micron, up to 3.7. You mix them together, you get this other kind of color image, which is even a better way to sharply bring out the details of where that leading edge of the fire is.
Okay.
You'll note, though, in the infrared, guess what? We don't see the smoke. That's too bad. And on these movie loops, you can see the clouds go by. These channels can't see through clouds. The lesson is there's no one perfect solution. You got to have the visible, you got to have some of that infrared single 3.7 channel, some of the infrared mixing to help get a different perspective. Another one, we've talked before about a fun channel called the day-night band.
Yes, one of my favorites.
Oh, yeah. And in Alaska in the winter, it's great. We've got all this darkness. The day-night band is so sensitive to seeing light, you can see features that otherwise aren't available. Now, in Alaska, when you have a forest fire, it tends to be light out all the time.
Right.
It's our summer. But we can go down south to the Rim Fire in California in 2013. Now, okay, it was in California, not Alaska, but Alaskan crews went down to fight that fire, so we
Fair
can
enough.
talk about it here on Alaska Weather. Here we have a 3.7 micron channel shot of the rim fire, again, kind of a horseshoe shape, showing that active fire front down there. And then we'll look again to the day-night band the visible light, and then you can see how the fire is all bright. You can see the active fire front and actually the city lights over there too. Turns out that the cities, while they're active in a social sense, are not really hot in a fire sense. So they don't show up in the 3.7 micron. They're not hot like a fire is, but the fire in the cities look the same from a visible light perspective. And a fun thing here too is that we can see the smoke plume going north from the rimfire on the day-night band. So if we were ever to have, like in 2004 in Alaska, you get dark at night, we still had an active fire season that year.
Right.
That was, you know, that really bad year. The day-night band didn't exist then, but if we had fires now in August, we could use it then. The lesson here is weather satellites, they offer many different wavelengths of light. Some are used for different purposes, and some of these we just looked at tonight are especially helpful here in Alaska to find and to track the behavior of these wildfires so the crews can go out there and do their jobs.
Sure, sure. So a satellite toolbox for the firefighting crews and the fire weather forecasters, and it just underlines how important satellites are, especially for Alaska and our mission for the National Weather Service to protect life and property, and also to enhance the national economy. So wonderful stuff there, Eric. And people can look at pictures like this anytime by going to gina.alaska.edu. You'll find images there all around Alaska at various times of the year, and not just about fire weather, but volcanic ash and smoke and anything else you want to check out. They're always beautiful pictures and always interesting to look at no matter what time of the day. Thanks again for joining us, Eric. We appreciate it and welcome you back anytime. For this edition of Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder. See you next time. And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at coastal water forecasts on the south coast of the Panhandle, east-northeast 15 knots for Friday, seas 7 feet. Northwest 10 to 15 knots, 5 to 6 foot seas on the north coast, and Lynn Canal southerlies at 10 with 3 foot seas, and then for the central and southern inside waters, northwesterlies 10 to 15 knots with the strongest winds occurring at Clarence Strait. And for Saturday, no change over the inside waters, south at 10 for Lynn Canal, 2 foot seas, south 10 or northwest at 10 with 2 foot seas for Stevens Passage. Clarence Strait, northwest 15 knots. Brisker on the south coast, small craft advisories, 25 to 30 knot northwest winds with 7 to 8 foot seas, and west northwest at 20 knots for the north coast, seas running 5 to 6 feet. Prince William Sound for Friday, light west winds at 10 knots with 2 foot seas. Cook Inlet, southwest breeze at 10 knots, 3 to 4 foot seas. North Gulf Coast, west-southwest. On the light side, just 10 knots, and seas laid down pretty good at 3 to 4 feet. Barren Islands west, 15, 3 foot seas. And Kamishak Bay, west winds at 20 knots with 7 foot seas. For Saturday, Prince William Sound, south winds at 10 knots, seas 2 feet. West-southwest 15 knots for the North Gulf Coast, seas running at about 5 feet. And southwest 15 for the Barren Islands, as well as Kamishak Bay, seas at about 5 feet. And south to southwest breezes for Cook Inlet with at 15 knots with 3 foot seas. For Bristol Bay, west winds at 20 knots, and the Alaska Peninsula a little lighter, but still out of the west at 15, seas there about 4 feet. And 15 knot winds right up to Sitkinak, southwest 20 knots for Shelikof Strait, east side of Kodiak Island, west at 20 knots with 5 foot seas. And for Saturday, Kodiak Island, Shelikof Strait, southwest 15 knots, and the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula, pretty light southwest breeze at 10 knots, 3 foot seas, west 15 for Bristol Bay, and west-northwest 15 knots from Cape Sarachev to Sitkinak, seas 5 feet. Western Aleutians, say Kiska to Shemya, southwest at 20 knots, 4 foot sea, Amchitka, 4 foot seas, Amchitka Island, west 15, and Adak and Atka, west 15 to 20 knots, and the Fox Islands, Akun Island all the way, and Unalaska Island and Umak Island, west at 15. Those will become northwest 15 for the Fox Islands on Saturday with 4 foot seas, maybe 5 feet, west-northwest 15 for the Central Aleutians, and from Kiska Island to Shemya, look for those southwest winds to continue at about 20 knots with 7 foot seas. Real light winds, light and variable for Norton Sound tomorrow. Otherwise, St. Lawrence Island, not much different. Southwest at 10 with 2 foot seas. Southwest coast, west 10 to 15 knots, and west-southwest 15 knots for the Pribilofs and St. Matthew Island. Seas running at about 4 feet. And then for Saturday, northwest winds or northwest breeze, 15 knots for the Pribilofs, and also northwest or St. Matthew Island. The sea's running at about 4 feet. Along the southwest coast, northwest 15 knots, 4-foot seas, and light northerlies for St. Lawrence Island with pretty slight seas, northwest of 10 with 2-foot seas for Norton Sound. Up north, brisk wind advisories continue for another day there for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast at 25 knots sustained out of the east, and east 20 knots for the central and west side. From Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort, northerlies of 15 knots, and then Cape Thompson to Wales, northwest at 15 knots. And that's holds through Saturday for that area, and then a little lighter 10-knot winds there around the western Capes, and then the western Arctic coast, east at 15, east to 20 on the central coast, and brisk wind advisories at least into the first day of the weekend for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, with that high center holding to the north. And for the outlook tonight, areas of fog and low clouds, Arctic coast, and the Chukchi Sea through the Strait into the Bering Sea, especially with those 2 weak disturbances and the low clouds, fog, and drizzle, but not too bad over the Aleutians or Alaska Peninsula. Diminishing thunderstorms and showers over the interior, and generally dry over the Panhandle, but that system to the southwest keeps a chance of rain over Prince of Wales Island, mainly Heidelberg to maybe Metlakatla, and then kind of a cloudy, showery afternoon for the Panhandle on Friday. Really no change over interior Alaska for the next couple of days, with showers scattered around, sunny areas scattered around, and some scattered afternoon thunderstorms scattered around, and high 60s to lower 70s, and a real weak disturbance washes out as it passes across the Alaska Peninsula Friday night, replaced by another one Saturday afternoon.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.